is another edition of the Comedy Time Capsule. I am Nina G, and today I am interviewing Jorge Sanchez. Jorge, can you say a little bit about yourself?
How's it going, Nina? I'm happy to be here. I'm a comedian here in San Jose for about 6 years now. Well, as some would say, I'm an aspiring comedian.
Who would that be?
But I've produced open mics and some shows around town. So anybody in the South Bay, they would have heard of me eventually. So I get around.
Well, and I wouldn't say it's some shows. You ran an open mic that only recently stopped, and so can you say a little bit about that? Because I think it was a really important part of the comedy community in San Jose.
That's very, very kind. Yeah, I ran the Frascati Comedy Night at Cafe Frascati in downtown San Jose for about over 5 years. And yeah, it's unfortunately the owner just sold the business. He wanted to move on to a different chapter of his life, and with it, went the business. But I think over the years, it's been a lot of fun, just having a lot of comedians come through, and overall, it was a fun experience. It was an experience that a lot of people apparently really enjoyed. So I'm happy to hear that it's created some sort of a following.
Yeah.
And some would compare the Frascati Comedy Night to the Brainwash in San Francisco when that was happening, and that's probably the biggest compliment ever, really, for an open mic. That's huge compliment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely is. Before you, I interviewed Tony, so I'm really I think it's really important that people who do an open mic, who have an open mic that is for that long, it's not only about cultivating people's voices in comedy, but it's also cultivating a culture. I've walked into some mics where I'm like, I need to get the fuck out of this. This is, why am I the only woman in this room? This feels really weird, really creepy, and I don't know why. Never felt that way at your place. And so we will talk about what things you thought about. So we will eventually get there. So I really want to talk about that. But can you say a little bit about how long you've been in comedy, and also if there's anything you would currently like to plug, or if you have a Venmo?
Yeah, totally. So I've been doing. I started comedy in 2014, but I didn't take it very seriously until 2015. I want to say, so maybe like a year. So I started when I was going through college, and I think in college I was at my highest creative peak, maybe, because I was also involved in filmmaking at the time. Also, I was playing music, so comedy kind of fitted in with me, just learning and performing different types of performances, and comedy for some reason has been the most rewarding. That sounds kind of weird saying that, but it has. I met a lot of great friends through comedy. I've developed as a performer over the years, and it's goes by quick. It goes by quick.
And how many years has it been then? Is it since you first stepped on stage?
About 6 years now, give or take. Yeah.
Okay, great. And your Venmo or anything you would like to plug?
Yeah, unfortunately, since Frascati closed down recently, I'm taking a break. I'm taking a long break producing shows. Actually, it's fun enough. I was going to take the time to travel to different scenes, see what's happening, different parts of the Bay Area or California for that matter, and, just really soak it in. But I do have my Venmo. I should have the placard with me. Hold on.
Grab it.
There you go. I'm not sure.
All right. That, but that's at Jorge Martin Sanchez.
Right. Venmo. So the first letter of each name is capitalized.
Oh, Okay, so make sure that people do that when you give Jorge a lot of your money. So that's
My
great.
stomach would appreciate it.
Oh, yes. Okay. What made you choose comedy? It sounded like you had a lot of creative outlets,
Yeah.
but why was comedy one of those?
Oh yeah, it's a bit of a story, really.
Please, that's why
Um,
we're here.
yeah. So at the time, I transferred from community college to university. So I went from De Anza Community College to San Jose State University, and quite frankly, it was a tough transition. Because it's a new place, had to make new friends, and I'm pretty bad at making new friends. So it was feeling pretty rough, not knowing the area very well, and on top of that, not having friends at the new school. And then I was after class, I saw a bunch of kids, a bunch of people coming. So my class, I took a class, it ended, and then afterwards, a couple people walked in for a club meeting, and they looked like they're having a good time. So I stuck around. And I asked what that was. It was the comedy club that was started by my friend Rob Roy, who has, passed away. But he created a class, and I stuck around, and they encouraged me to try it, and I tried it. And keep in mind, I write. I'm a screenwriter, and I figure, oh yeah, I could totally write jokes and produce and perform them. So I thought it was just another way to work on my writing. But soon enough, it became an addiction, and and I just started from there. After that club meeting, I was like, oh yeah, I want to do this. And over the years, I just hit up open mics and yeah, so I think it really came out of desperation, I guess you might say, because like people, sometimes people get to comedy, they're like, oh yeah, I've always been told I should do stand up. For me, nobody told me to do stand up. Nobody, even when I told them like when I started doing stand up, and I told some family members are like, really, you're not even the funniest one in the family. So it came with good timing that started comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay,
I made a lot of friends. I made a lot of friends through it, so it worked out.
so I want to dig in a little bit about the club because I think it's important to look at how this was developed. It was a comedy club, not like a comedy club where you sat and you drank and you watched people. Instead, it was like a club, like a college club, community that was based on comedy. And can you kind of describe what that was like? Was it only stand up or was it sketch? Was it improv? Was it movies too? And why did Rob Roy create that and what inspired him?
I'm happy you asked that, Dina, because Rob Roy in that club really paved the way of how I would conduct for Scotty later, because it was pretty much student run, student led, and it was just a, them performing to each other. So it really was a workshop. It was a comedy workshop, really. And afterwards, we hit up open mics. But the idea is that first you go to the club meeting and you workshop, and they were very supportive. So it wasn't like there was no pressure to if your joke is not going to work, that's okay. It's part of the fun, because if your joke doesn't work, there's a couple people in the club that will help you punch it up and all that jazz. So that club really taught me that comedy can be a very warming, welcoming environment, and that's something that I try to emulate when I started for Scotty. Was because that club was starting a community on its own, and I mean, since Rob Roy has passed, that comedy club in San Jose State has grew exponentially. I mean, they got touring acts coming to the university now. But overall, I think the best takeaway from that is that it created a great community that was supportive, and that made it a real constructive environment to work on your material, which later you would use at the open mics and stuff like that.
And why did Rob create it? Who was he? Can you say a little bit more about him so we know who he is?
Yeah, he's quite a character. He was going to San Jose State. He was studying film like I was, and he mostly did open mics for a while. He's from Orange County. That's where he was from, and he's been doing comedy in LA for a bit, but nothing serious. He was very like he did stand up for the fun of it. He didn't really do it, as making career moves or trying to, you know, strategize a way to get to the clubs. For him, just going to an open mic and going up on stage to like either one person or to 10 people. That's for him. That's what comedy was about. Was like, don't forget, especially when you're starting out, don't worry about the clubs. Just work on your material. It's about having fun with your friends, going to open mics. And Rob Roy, he was not only was he just kind, but he had a lot of wisdom, because he for years he worked in radio and film, and so he had an idea of how to collaborate with people. So I think that's very important, that people forget that stand up can be collaborative, and sometimes the best stand up is probably collaborative, in some way. And yeah, he was like, oh God, he was like middle age. Honestly, that's the funniest part. He was a middle-aged man going to the university. Nothing wrong with that. But it was just funny that a bunch of us were like in our early 20s, and he was like in his late 30s, and overall, but like he had such a youthful spirit to him that we always saw him as one of our peers. So it was never really weird.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the one thing about comedy is, like, people kind of check at the door, any class, any race. I would say no a lot of times, but like there are friends of every age group, every class group. Nobody really cares about your education. They just care, are you funny or not? And so it's an equalizer in a lot of ways too.
Yeah. It wasn't, yeah. In a lot of ways, it's like if a person wasn't funny, that's okay. You could always help them out, or So it was. How can I say this? It was a much more, because sometimes in comedy you let people do their thing, right? They'll figure it out eventually. But for Rob, it was always like, hey, if there's an opportunity to help out,
Mm-hmm. And so, was it a shock when you went to an open mic outside of that?
Oh yeah, that was scary. That was, ironically, if it was at Frascati at the general open mic, they had a general open mic where musicians, poets, and comedians, and that was scary because when you workshopping a joke, it's fun, and you're doing it with your friends, so you figure, oh, if they're laughing, must be good. But once the first time I did it in front of strangers, it was a whole different, ball game, in the sense that you're counting on getting some sort of reaction, any reaction, hopefully. And I think it went pretty terrible my first time, honestly. It went pretty bad. But as soon as I got off stage, I was like, oh, it feels like sex, for the first time, because I'm glad I got over with. And I could have done better. And when can I do it again?
That's perfect. Yeah. Okay. And so you said that, and so how purposeful were you, and how deliberate and intentional is the word. How intentional were you when creating for Scotty and the environment there on comedy night?
Oh yeah. God, this is a whole saga in some ways, because it was totally unintentional. After performing there at the general open mic, the manager says, hey, there's too many comedians taking over spots for musicians. Why don't we just have our own comedy night, so we could shepherd other comedians to that night, and they, for some reason, they offered it to me, and I was probably like 5 months into comedy, which is not a good idea. People usually are at least a year in to start comedy, and me, I didn't know what I was doing. But again, my background was in production, film production. I ran clubs at De Anza. I ran, so when it came to organization, I figured I could apply it there. But man, running open mic is a whole different game. That I was naive, and I will sadly admit that I ran it poorly for the first year, because I didn't promote it well, and the insecurities of a first year comic is there. So not only are you worried about how good you are? Now you're worried about, how's the mic doing? And
Mm-hmm.
I might not have been the most gracious character in the scene, because it just stressed. It's not like, for honestly, it was a learning lesson, because for the first year, awful, just awful, because I tried to emulate uh, other open mics in the area, which were dive bars. And for Cafe for Scott is a cafe, it is not a dive bar. So in trying to make it like a dive bar open mic, it just nothing worked. So it wasn't until I took a little hiatus, and then I came back, and I realized, okay, I need to build the ship differently. It's not the usual ship. I need to personalize. I need to customize the ship, because it's a whole different setting. It's not the ocean. It's the sea. If that makes sense. Um, so it wasn't until like maybe the third year, between the second and third year of Frascati, that I started applying. I just doing different things, and trying to be a better, not just a better performer, but a better person. Because that's one regret I have in comedy producing that show, is I really could have been a better person the first year, because I was a jerk to a lot of people, because I was just stressed out. So if somebody came with a question, I want to hear it. So and from there it's like, all right, I just need to be a better person, and people will respect you, like you. And then that's where it became intentional. I was like, okay, what have I learned personally through comedy? It's all right. So I'll take a little from Scotty, which got to be nicer, got to be more constructive, got to be more, um, and then also just like, what kind of mics do I want to have, because there's some mics that I don't like, like you said, for various reasons. So I was like, all right, what would I do differently? And then I quickly learned through that is that, uh, believe it or not, every person that runs a comedy open mic, they set the tone, and not just the show, but they set the tone and the behavior that's tolerated in the venue. So and so I was like, all right, well, I pretty much what I learned is I got to be more me. That's exactly what it is. So, I became more organized. And I tried to be as professional as I could. And I think with that, I was rewarded with a great community. I was rewarded with great performances. I was rewarded with great stuff that have great friendships. By the way, I
And
know I'm blabbering a lot. I just
no, this is the whole this is how it works. So this is perfect. And so I want to ask you a follow-up thing. When Frascati was going on, what would a typical week look like? Because you had that on Wednesday nights, and then what did you do the other nights in terms of comedy?
yeah, it was a full-on operation, really. Because I applied some photography that I usually do. So it's like, all right, taking photography, editing the photography, getting the promos out there, figure out. Pretty much, I was just busy building up momentum for people to come out on that one Wednesday night for those. So it took a week's worth, trying to have people come out for those 2 hours on one night. But on top of that, also just networking, also just seeing what's other talent out there. Going to comedy clubs and seeing the local community, and see like, oh yeah, he's great, or she's great, or they's great, and then like I want to invite them to my room. So I would have feature acts, and the whole point of that, it really was not just to invite more people outside of the South Bay to come down to the South Bay for comedy, but also for local comedians here in the South Bay to know higher caliber acts that are also local, and to network and trying to see them work. Because because I wanted for Sky to also be like a development stage for young comedians to like see what's great locally and learn from them and get to know them, because in most performance arts, it's about networking. I feel it has a stigma. It's one like, you got to build friendships, you got to be nice, because the people today might be the people that might provide you with opportunities in the future. So and they're always going to remember how you made them feel, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so it just just pulling people, pulling promotions, and and then on top of that, make sure that get the best equipment I could for that for Scotty. Yeah.
Great. Well, good. And it was a space that I always really, really appreciated, especially because I could hit Caravan afterwards. And Caravan is more of a dive bar, but I've never had a set there that I've been like, oh, I shouldn't have come. Like, it's always been worth it. And so it was great to hit two of my favorite mics in San Jose. And I personally, like, there's a lot that I love about the San Francisco scene, but I've felt my most comfortable oftentimes in San Jose. And I think there's something about the community there that I really like. And I know it's the people, but I don't know how that happened. But I think stuff like this is why that happened.
Yeah. Well, I cannot take credit for that, but I think you, not just me, but other people have to lead by example on how to behave. It's okay to be competitive, I think, but like I said, it's better to start building a community and be more supportive of each other. And I'm happy that that's done in San Jose. I think a lot of comedians here are more supportive towards each other. I can't talk. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I think there is a difference between networking for, oh, I want to try to get that gig, and networking to develop relationships. And maybe that is some of the difference there.
Yeah, and definitely. And yeah, I think, again, like, I don't know, San Jose is changing so much as far as its comedy scene. There's great young and new comics are hungry, and they're like producing a lot of great stuff. But most of them are genuinely good people, and that's the kind of thing you want to see in your scene, because not only is it helpful to your own scene, but it's for people who come from other scenes. They come down to San Jose, and they feel welcomed. That's what you want.
And and this idea just occurred to me that I don't really like the way that San Jose is going. Like, it feels so techy. It feels so artificial. It feels like some of the culture has kind of been sucked out by the tech culture. But the comedy scene doesn't feel that way. Is it like a counterculture thing? Like, what is that? Is that anything, or am I just fantasizing?
No, I think there's some truth. I think there's a lot of truth to that, what you're saying. It's a lot of changing in dynamics, whether it's housing or economics and the people moving in but I think at its heart, San Jose, for the most part, is blue collar. And a lot of tech stuff is, usually in Palo Alto, Mountain View, but it's growing in San Jose. But I think there's a more blue collar feel to the performers here so far, majority of them at least. And on top of that, and those performers who are more, into tech stuff, they kind of actually do. There's a lot of corporate opportunities here, and some people take advantage of that, because not many places in the world is the biggest headquarters of the biggest companies in tech, around. Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit of everything. You get in San Jose, you get some blue collar stuff, but at the same time, it's right next, like you said, like more white collar stuff, tech stuff, and it both have its pros and cons. But I think there's opportunity in both.
Yeah. All right. Good. Interesting. Thank you. Let me see what my next question is here. Were you making a living at comedy, whether partial or full time?
No, I was not making a living. No, it's yeah. If you're if you're joining comedy for the money, it's not gonna be there. At least not for a long time.
Not for a really long time. Yes.
That's part of the game. But when I was paid, I was always grateful. But no, I think that's a good question, because I think a lot of comedians they think like they could. Can I cuss here?
Yeah, totally. Fuck yeah.
There's a certain stereotype that comedians are having where it's I'm a fuck up. I'm a fuck up. Because I portray a fuck up on stage, I should be a fuck up in life as well, and that's not true. I think it's important for everybody to have a stable financial center or have a stable life, outside of comedy, because the the reward. If think like I don't know, like I find it weird if I go to a comedy show, and then I'm like more worried about the money than actually performing well. I feel like I would be in a tough mindset if that was the case. But no, I made enough money for drinking and for eating, and I can't complain about that.
Well, and I think what you're talking about is that attitude or kind of that adage that a lot of comics have, that you can't like a job because it'll make you less hungry to do comedy. That you have to hate the alternatives in order to succeed in comedy. And what you're saying that is that that's not a necessarily practical thing. You have to have your basic needs met.
Yeah. You'll burn out too fast if you just rely on comedy for your living.
Where did most of your bookings come from, other than the one that you had every Wednesday at your own mic?
Booking, like people I booked.
Well, how did people book you? Was it dive bars? Was it clubs? Was it colleges? Was it corporations? What, where, and what?
That's that's a great question, because I'm letting you right now. When you run an open mic, nobody books you. Nobody cares. If you're running a showcase, then people will book you more likely. Well, at least there's a higher chance of them booking you if you run a showcase, because they want to be on your showcase. When you run an open mic, nobody offered me it. I did not get many opportunities to get booked, honestly. But,
really?
Yeah. But then again, that's okay, because I needed those years to develop. So when I started getting booked, I was more ready than when I wanted to be. Does that make sense? So, but a lot of the booking, honestly, I think the higher chance to get booked, I feel, from my experience, is to just be around other places. Hang out in Santa Cruz, hang out in San Francisco, show your face, perform. And people will think of you, but at least that's my experience. My experience is just show up and support others, and eventually, they'll support you in some way.
Yeah. So before COVID, what was your process in coming up for new material and honing it?
Yeah. So about maybe a year ago, I started a workshop, a once a month workshop in San Jose, that kind of ran, in congruent with for Scotty. And so every month I would meet up with comedians to workshop, and that's been so beneficial in writing material, because it kind of made me be on top of myself, like, all right, I need to write material to get ready for the workshop. And from there we workshop it, and I develop at least a couple bits, and you have the whole month to just go to open. I think open micing is where your bit really comes together. So that was my process: is first week workshop, then the 3 other weeks just hit up as much mics as I could in a week, and just work on that new material.
Okay. What was before all of the COVID stuff, what was your favorite part about doing comedy, and what was your least favorite part?
It's probably the same answer to both. The people. The great thing about comedy is...
You're the second person to say that. You're the second person to say that exact same thing. And I've only interviewed 4 people.
But here, let me explain. The great thing about comedy is the people, in the sense that you get to perform to people, and then you get to meet your friends, and that after the show, you get to hang out with people and just have a good time. On the same token, it could be a bad crowd, or you just, or there might be some comedians you don't want to deal with. It could be a bad night. We have to deal with both. On top of that, I love the traveling. I love the traveling aspect of comedy. I like the feeling of just going to a different town and being a stranger and then performing, and then just getting to know the town and the food and the culture. So traveling's been a big thing I really love about comedy.
It, yeah, tell me more about that because I really love that too. Because like I'll do research. Like where was I did a show, a Peach show in Hollister. And
Oh
I
yeah,
was like, oh, I'm going to look up Hollister. I'm going to find out, what, like, oh, yeah, that's right. Casa de Fruita's there. I'm going to make a Casa de Fruita reference. And I'm going to look up Yelp and I'm going to find a restaurant. So you kind of do that same thing?
yeah, same thing. I'm like what can I make fun of? What can I bring to their attention, or more importantly, like when I go to a new place or somewhere out of town, I go first question I ask, say, what's the best place to get food? And it's interesting. Like I did a show in Salinas, and I asked them where's the best place to get food, and they said shrimp tacos inside a casino. And I was like, oh, that's weird. I didn't know they had casinos in Salinas, but sure enough, they had a little casino, and yeah, some of the best fish tacos right there. So you just get it to know the local culture and the history. It's a lot of fun.
Okay, I just thought of our TV show. It's this, where comics go somewhere and you watch that process of them learning about the town and eating, and you get like, so it's like a cooking show, it's like a comedy show, it's like
it's
like a tourism show.
It's like Anthony Bourdain meets something comedy related.
Yeah. Oh, it's a hell of a good idea. Okay. We're gonna work on that. Okay. So what do you miss least about doing comedy now that you are quarantined?
The bombing. I don't miss bombing. Yeah.
Okay, but then that brings me to the next question, which is what are some ways that you are coping either financially, creatively, or psychologically with the quarantine? And one of the things that you have been doing is Zoom, this thing here, and holding that, but you got bombed there. So you didn't bomb, but you got bombed.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. Don't share your Zoom meeting on Twitter. Don't do that.
Okay, and so explain all of that so that we have a historical record of what happens and how that happens and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So pretty much, I'm trying on Zoom, and the best way I love Zoom is just conversation, and that's what me and my friend Falco have been using Zoom for, is just hanging out with different comics at night usually, and just hang out. And usually when you invite a comic on, you give them a link, and then this link will bring you here. For some reason, my friend Falco decided to post the link to join this Zoom conference call hangout on Twitter, and we just got a bunch of strangers, which was fun at first. Like, oh shoot, there's someone new, like we don't know. But then before you know it, they started saying a lot of racial epithets. They start, posting videos and photos of pornography that's not my type of genre. And it became wild because once one of them came in, a bunch of them came in, and it was oh god, Nina, I think I accidentally banned you in one of those. Trying to fucking
you did. I went on my first Zoom. You had banned me.
I'm so sorry for that. You were a casualty. You were.
I was.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to make is, yeah, people can easily hijack these Zoom shows and just start heckling or just start, posting stuff that you're like, whoa, that's the internet, all right. That's that side of the internet. Not fun.
And so how are you handling being quarantined, whether like psychologically as a comic or creatively, because it sounds like you do a lot of different kinds of creative things, and financially, if that comes into play?
Well, luckily, after a week of shelter in place, I'm working. part-time, so I'm making some income, so it's been nice. um, so I'm not gonna lie, it's been tough. First 2 weeks was fun and games. It's like, oh shit, it's a pandemic. Um, but after that, after the third week, it dawned on me like, oh shit, like I'm really not just so I feel stuck physically, but I'm feeling stuck creatively. So and once you're in that fucking whirlpool of insecurity and like stress and anxiety, like it's hard to get out of it. So it's been a real struggle. But one thing I'm trying to do is taking walks, do photography. Trying to get back into photography. I post my photography on Instagram. Also, I've been
What's your Instagram?
Yeah, at Jorge M Sanchez. I could post it later.
Great.
And I've been trying to write at least one joke on Facebook. You know, so at least to keep those comedy juices going.
Mm-hmm.
But every day is a little different. Sometimes all day I'm binge watching MasterChef. One day I'm diving into a rabbit hole on YouTube of the other day I was in a rabbit hole of barbecue smoke, like the smoking, how to smoke barbecue. So now I'm like, oh, I could totally do that, and but learning how to make cocktails. I've been drinking a lot more. That's probably not a good thing to admit, but I've been drinking a lot more. So I've been learning how to make cocktails. Yeah, so I don't know. Like every day, you try to be a little productive and try to be a little different, but it's been tough. It's been tough psychologically for sure. I'm not gonna lie about that.
Yeah, no, it definitely has. And thank you for being honest about it and exploring that more. What do you, let's see, how has, and you may have already answered this, but if you want to dive into it more, you can. How did the quarantine and COVID change how you are doing comedy creatively or financially? But it sounds like creatively is really where you're at with it.
You know what? I think it's taught me to not take things for granted. I think really take stage time seriously now, a lot more than I did before. Not just that, but hang out with friends. Take them more. Don't take those things for granted no more. I think that's what I learned. I think once we're out of this, I think I'm gonna fucking hit the pavement running and just try to go to as many more mics or try to get on more shows to just uh, make up for lost time, because that's something creatively that's been bothering me. Like, oh my god, like if I haven't performed for 2 months, like how awful am I going to be on stage? So that's a big concern of mine. And ultimately, it's kind of this whole COVID quarantine has me thinking a lot about my trajectory, my creative trajectory, and even career. So that's something I've been working on as well. It's like, okay, now that literally I have nothing else to do right now, like where do I really want to be in the next 5 years? So I've been planning to make some changes now once we get back to it.
And where do you think, and you don't have to share this if it's private and you're still thinking through it, but where do you think you want to be in 5 years?
Hopefully you're not stuck at home again. Pretty much, I think I want to get, so for about a year and a half, I've been hiking every weekend. And so I think that's where I want to be. I want to be I'm thinking of trying to look for a career that requires not just some traveling, but requires something out in nature. So I'm really thinking of getting to like some wildlife video stuff or wildlife photography stuff.
Mm-hmm.
At least for now, that's what I'm thinking. Because this whole paycheck to paycheck thing, it's not working out.
Yeah, it's rough. Mm-hmm. So you said that in terms of your comedy, you're trying to do one joke a day. You've been doing some stuff on Zoom. I know you've done my show, which is a show and tell with comics, and that was great. Are you doing other things, or what other things are you doing to do comedy now in the COVID world?
Yeah. I've been trying to. So I started this series on Instagram Live where I'm chatting with comedians in quarantine. So I've been doing that once in a while, where on live I chat with the comedian for like 10, 15 minutes about how they're holding up. And we there's a little chat there, so we read people's questions. That's been fun. As far as Zoom, I shouldn't be, but I'm a little picky with the Zoom shows. Uh, sometimes I get approached to get on a Zoom show where it's like just performing, and I'm not really privy to that. I much prefer Zoom shows with a something more interesting like yours, where it's like a show and tell, where it's more of a storytelling, conversational kind of show. So I've been gravitated to be on those shows a lot more, and also
If I could stop you there, why is that? What is it about that performative thing on Zoom that doesn't do it for you, but it does in real life?
I to really perform full on stand up, I need the energy of the room. I need to really read the reaction from the crowd. Otherwise, it just feels like I'm talking into a computer. um, but that being said, I respect those who do try it. But I think I understand that this medium, the Zoom medium, virtual medium, may require something a little different. Just like for Scotty, it was not a bar; it was a cafe. This stuff is not a comedy room. It's ultimately virtual space, and I think that this should be. I think it should allow. I think there's room for more opportunity to get a little creative with it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that it's just not a cut and paste,
Yeah.
but it's a finesse of making it work
Right.
in a medium that's like this.
Yeah. Well, the best thing I love about this is just the storytelling aspect. The fact that you get to see someone tell a certain story, either about something that has a room or just something that happened to them. So far, that's what I'm grabbing towards. Is more of a storytelling platform that doesn't even have to be comedically. I find that more fascinating.
Yeah. Hold on a sec, okay?
Yeah. Oh, is there someone in the room?
Yeah, Ethan is playing his phone right in the next room. Okay, here we go. So I can block that out. Okay, how do you think COVID and the quarantine will change the landscape of stand-up comedy, if it will at all?
That's a good question. Don't know, but I have a couple theories. For one, I think for the first couple months, possibly even the first year, I think it's gonna be stuff for local. It's gonna be rough for local comedy. It's hard enough trying to get people out to local comedy shows. I can only imagine it being harder now when there's a
Yeah,
possibility.
because they may die. Like
Yeah, people may die. Yeah. On top of that, they may die after seeing horrible acts. That's even worse.
you
uh,
see someone die on stage and then you die.
yeah.
It's
But once it comes back, I think it will work wonders. I mean, one thing I keep hearing, not from general people, not just comedians, is that people want to laugh. That people are looking for more opportunities to laugh. And I realize that these YouTube, Instagram comedians are ahead of the curve, as far as providing content during these times. But I think that might be a. I think this might have a lot of comedians to consider that not only do you need to work on stage your stage act, possibly also your web content. You might have to do both. Maybe that's the new era.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that it brings in a whole other thing there. And it has stretched a lot of us. I wouldn't have done this unless, if I could leave my house, I would not be doing this. And so I think it's kind of forced us into some new areas, which is interesting. Now, you kind of mentioned this, that people want to laugh and they're looking for that. Do you think that something like this could change the sensibilities of humor in our culture? And the reason why I ask this is we have this, the entire world to a big extent is experiencing this all at the same time. We really haven't had one shitty thing happen to all of us. And it's shittier for some people than it is for others, but we all have the same fears. What impact would that have? And also, thinking about part of why I'm doing this is I was thinking about how did humor change in the Black Plague? How did it change after Spanish flu? Did people go to a darker place, or did they want all puppy dogs and rainbows? What is your opinion on
that? I agree. I think there's gonna be a darker edge to people's sensibilities and humor. I think that's psychology. That's the most common thing, especially in war-torn places around the world. People cope with darker comedy. But that being said,
can you say a little bit more about that? About examples of that, or what you've seen, or what you've heard?
Yeah, like when I go to Mexico, their sense of humor is so much darker that they kind of like the kind of shock value, because they've seen worse shit in life. Like they experience, fucking shootouts and cartels. And I'm pretty sure there's many examples, of other places that experience genocide or that experienced famine or starvation. It's like they use humor to not just to cope, but also to build bonds. Be like, oh, like I'm making light of our situation, but we all know that we're in the trenches together. But I think some of that's definitely gonna bleed into our American culture, as far as entertainment. But that being said, you mentioned whether this is gonna make it good or bad. I think it's gonna be neutral. I think a lot of good things are gonna come out of it, but I think a lot of bad things can come out of it at the same time. This platform is allowing more people to get on and try, and less gatekeepers, which is great. But at the same time, there needs to be a refinement. And that's something that what gatekeepers provided. At least the good ones. Refinement. So, I think there's going to be both. I think at the end of the day, it depends on the performer and how they utilize the tech or the skills they got and how they apply it. Does that answer the question? I'm sorry. I'm not sure that.
Yeah, no, I think so. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I just want to make sure I answered the question. Yeah, that's what I got to say about that. I think I don't know. I'm trying to stay optimistic. I think, but at the same time, I'm being realistic. Where it's like, yeah, I see good things happening, but I see bad things happening for comedy, and we'll find out.
It would be a shame if what came out of this is a bunch of people became YouTube stars, and then they get a weekend at the Improv and at the Punchline.
That's already happened.
I know, it's totally already happened.
But actually, locally, what I hope happens locally is definitely more collective community building. I think as great as I say things are in San Jose, you still have a long way to go in of working together for same goals, and just letting go of egos. Some people have egos too, and I hope this kind of makes people realize, oh shit, like we're in this together as comedians. We should be working together a lot more, and I'm sure that could be applied in not just in San Jose, but in other scenes as well.
Yeah, that and I think if like 3 or 4 shows got together and pulled their audiences right now, they could do a Zoom something or other. If like one night is this place, the next night is this place, so that they could switch around, but yet they pull everybody in more collaboration there, which would help everyone. What, if anything, has the quarantine taught you about the art or business of comedy?
It could easily not be there. It's something, because I'm saying not just locally, but even when you listen to podcasts of professional comedians who they themselves are stressed out about not being able to perform during these times. That this thing could easily be taken away from you, whether you like it or not. So I think that's what I'm learning is you get a plan for situations like this. So you cannot ignore this tech. You can't really be a purist anymore. I don't feel in this digital age.
And stand-up comedy, which is a very American thing, or at least we like to think it is, and it's only been around for like 100 years or something, since like vaudeville on, and so we're still, compared to visual arts, which were on caves, it's a relatively new art that we haven't been through these plagues in the same way necessarily. I mean, there may have been a court gesture or something, but Shakespeare, but but a guy on a stage or a woman on a stage or a person on a stage hasn't been there.
Yeah, you're completely right. Oh my God, you hit it right on the nail, because it's a relatively new performance art. It's relatively new, and you mentioned in the past, the Renaissance happened after the Black Plague. After the Black Plague, fucking took out half of Europe, and once people realized, oh shit, we need to be cleaner. We need to fucking work on our hygiene. That's where this great explosion of art came out. This explosion of architecture, and I think the same thing could happen with this COVID-19. I think there could be another explosion of different art forms flourishing and being experimental and really getting out there in the cultural zeitgeist.
God, I hope so. Okay,
that makes sense for sure.
Next thing. Are there any questions that you think that I should have asked that I haven't asked?
No. All your questions have been great.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great question. You got me a little insecure now. Like, what do I wish you asked me about? I'm not a little narcissist on my side, wouldn't it be? Like,
yeah, you're a comic. What do you think? No, but also, is there stuff that I haven't like? I don't have all the questions, just like I don't have all the answers. And so is there anything else that you wanted to talk about in the midst of all of this?
No, all your questions been great.
Great. Well, thank you. Come on. And do you have any last words and anything to plug?
Big shout out and thank you to you. I think you're doing amazing things on these Zoom shows. I think your fucking your fucking show last time I was on was great. That was fun. Anybody who's watching this should check out your show. But also thank you for kind of asking. You'd be surprised when you ask people how much you can learn, or at least get an idea of what other people are going through. So thank you for that. And I don't know, follow me on Instagram at Jorge M. Sanchez, or on Facebook.
And check out your interviews, check out your photography, check out your Venmo, Jorge.
I need a publicist. I'm really bad at promoting myself. It's not that's not a good thing. But yeah. I mean, check out, I have old podcast episodes that people can binge on. They're on SoundCloud. Just look for the JMS podcast. On YouTube, check out some short films I've made. Search for my name, Jorge M. Sanchez, San Jose, California. Got a couple of black and white vignettes, short films. Also for my Venmo at Jorge M. Sanchez. I'll bring it up once again.
One more time. There we go. Perfect. Got it.
But thank you, Nina.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Huh?
That was the question I wish you asked me.
What?
Is Jorge, what other shit you're getting yourself into that people can go check
out? Well, I'm glad you're getting yourself into other shit. Yeah. So just don't get into that shit with Eric Summers on a walk. I think that's